It's interesting how we write. It's kind of a backwards approach. We kind of layer this thing and it create this huge sort of sound, and then we find ourselves having to dumb it down again for the for the sake of the song.
Welcome to the Indie Seat. My name is Nick Olivera. My guest today is the iconoclastic indie rock group Pans. Pans, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
How many instruments do all of you guys know how to play put together?
Guitar and like piano and stuff like that.
Sitar on my end, ukulele, clarinet, vocals. I did consider vocals definitely an instrument. Percussion, auxiliary sort of percussion, and so many different instruments that have gone through my hands over the years. But I would say that those are kind of like the main ones. So I'd say about 6 on my end.
I grew up a guitar player. Bass was my first instrument. Now I mainly play piano and pans and sing. Most string instruments that I can get my hands on. And hopefully very soon an instrument called an ohms martino, which I'm waiting to get. When movies change from being silent films to having music and sound, a lot of these instruments crept their way in and people just perceive them as violins or clarinets. But in that time period, music was sound and TV was groundbreaking. So they wanted to do this Art Deco, it was an Art Deco time period with the 20s, and they wanted to kind of use that instrument. And most people, they've heard it, but they don't know it. They think it's just another classical instrument, but it's actually one of the world's first synthesizers.
The music of Pans kind of has this cinematic feel to it. Where do you guys get that sound from?
I'd say it's the classical element that we're really inspired by, and that classical element, I would say, combined with the narrative element, only necessitates or is natural to that cinematic sound. I would say, being able to express ideas and emotions through the use of certain cadences, the selective choice of certain instruments to come through certain instances in music would behoove that sort of sound, I would say. So if there's any sort of forward explanation as to why maybe we sound that way, I would say it has something to do with that.
I'd say also like the approach to structuring the songs in a way that it's kind of like more of a story. Like sometimes we'll have certain meter changes, like in time signature, in order to spare ourselves an extra beat for a section because it's kind of what the story requires. It's a kind of breath of air it needs. And I think that a lot of times we approach the song in that way of thinking of it as a story that has an overarching kind of theme.
Do you guys begin a song with a story in mind, or do you have the sound first and you think, okay, what?
Sometimes I think the three of us, we write as composers first instead of instrumentalists. So it's tricky because it's not something that sometimes comes naturally as an instrumentalist. You're physically and kind of psychologically comfortable behind your instrument, and when you strip the instrument away and it's just kind of the mind and the three minds, things can get interesting. So we it's kind of a backwards approach. Sometimes we write a lot on music softwares like Ableton, DAW, and we just add all these things to the songs. It's trumpet, because Jack plays trumpet, he plays kalimba, he also plays a bunch of instruments. So we kind of layer this thing and it create this huge sort of sound, and then we find ourselves having to dumb it down again for the sake of the song.
For clarity,
And then after it sounds good, it's almost kind of like that's when we go back and learn the song that we wrote. It's interesting how we write. It's we just make it really complicated for ourselves. We're finishing an album now that took a really long time, and it took a really long time for various reasons. He was in the Peace Corps and he was in Mongolia for a few years. We kind of had a change of players in the band, drummers. So it was always kind of like, the album's got to get done, but we always had the live music thing and trying to show people the songs because they're not easy songs to learn. It's not like a drummer can just play anything on it. It's an arrangement, and the arrangement's got to be a certain way. So that while also learning what it is that we're doing, what it is that we're going for. It's been a learning curve, a process that's, I think, made us all better musicians and composers.
There's quite a few songs on this upcoming album that we're releasing that are actually a few years old, and they've kind of been in the works for a couple of years. And I mean, just recently we just stripped an entire bridge out of a song that we've been playing for forever.
Yeah.
We just don't play that bridge anymore. We just cut it out of the album because it was kind of superfluous.
We've learned to be patient with ourselves.
If you guys had carte blanche to do the score for any film that you wanted to, what would it be?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Me myself, I'm partial to the David Lean films of the 1960s.
Lawrence of Arabia, Bridge on the River Kwai.
Yeah, Bridge on the River Kwai, Dr. Zhivago. Sort of like big cinematic sort of deals that have that are very encompassing and ambitious in their scope of humanity.
Yeah, I think I would probably choose the spaghetti westerns of like the 60s and 70s. I love Ennio Morricone. I love the music to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And I think more so that aspect of like this desert vibe, there's something really cool when you orchestrate or you watch movies like Lawrence of Arabia and you see the desert scene, and whenever desert scenes are orchestrated or portrayed through music, to me that's what I want to hone in on.
The one that kind of comes to mind is I like that Christopher Nolan film Memento. I think that it'd be really cool to like write a score like that, where maybe you like juxtapose the certain instances of musical motifs and phrases, like kind of have the end of the score show up in the beginning and have like kind of a lead up to it.
Do you think, given the times that we're living in now, do you think artists have an obligation to comment on what's going on globally, or do you think they have a right to just enjoy making their art privately?
I think that naturally when you're younger, you're angrier, and as the longer you are an artist, you kind of hone into self, and it's more retrospective or introspective. So it's kind of natural, I think, for all artists to want to do that. I think just the nature of creating art, unless I don't know if it's art if it's not seen or heard by anyone but the creator. I don't know if it is. So I think the nature of sharing it and exposing it, we're creators of culture, and I think because we're creators of culture, we are responsible to speak about the issue, even if it's in a very metaphorical, flowery way, kind of like how we do. We're very much about what's happening and worried for the future. So I think the music for us, it's kind of that message of fragility, of life and of choices people make as a whole.
The album is it's called A New Wilderness, and a lot of the songs throughout it, a lot of the songs on this album, they have themes kind of relating to problems we see in society, and essentially how the new landscape will be formed after this society and after the next society. And what we write and what we think about when we're writing definitely is influenced by what's going on around us at the current time, even if we don't kind of directly address it.
It's like the difference of being like what they call an active or an involved artist, where you're involved in the times, as opposed to a passive artist. But in a way, there's no way of not being involved. It's just, there's no way.
I think the nature of art is that like you're always going to be involved in some sort of way, And our album speaks of nature, and I think one of the nature of nature is that there is this interconnectivity. I'm very much on the boat of like Ralph Waldo Emerson, in that thought that like we are interconnected and there is a constant interplay which is going on. Even if you want to live your personal life, the avoidance of the outer world is a poor sort of game. We can try to run away, you know, go to the furthest reaches of the world, but you know, we can never really escape that interconnectivity. And eventually it finds us, you know. And so I think art is not free of that sort of, you might call it a curse, you might call it a blessing. For those, I think, who they use it as a force to change, and they use it with awareness, it's a blessing. For those that run away from it, you know, and don't want to face, you know, that interconnectivity, you know, and basic human nature, and denying it can become a curse. Check us out on Instagram at Pan's Music. We have stuff on Spotify as well. You can check out our older stuff with Pan's Permia. You can check that out on Spotify as well.
The first album's Oracle. The next one coming out soon is New Wilderness.
You've been watching The Indie Seat, brought to you by Context of a Generation. My name is Nick Olivera. Tune in next time.
So that was the Indie Seat. If you like what you saw and you want to be a partner, or if you want to collaborate with us, even if you're an artist and you want to submit your work, check out our website, contextofageneration.org, or go ahead and submit an email to us at submit@contextofageneration.org. And for all the artists, make sure you put your name, your social media handles, and attach some of your work as well. And for those who are interested in being a partner or collaborating, please email us and we would love to reach back out. Peace. That was the Indie Seat. Thank you.